Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening to all. This is another edition of New Covenant's Community Connect. I'm Elder Stanley Christopher Burns, and today, this 28th day of February, this last day of February, this Black History Month, we'll be celebrating or speaking about Blacks in entrepreneurship and business growth. We have a special guest here with it. We'll speak about. I'll introduce him to you in a moment. But as I consider that this is the last day of Black History Month, and actually Women's Month begins tomorrow, just in considering the things that are going on here in the U.S., around the world, there's a lot of people who are wondering, now what am I going to do? Well, do something. No matter what your situation is, do something. I was considering earlier as I was preparing for our guests, I was thinking about a close friend of mine who was always skilled, a very good worker. He was an accountant. He worked for the state of Michigan, did a great job. He was just very meticulous in how he did everything. And then one day his job went away and he had to do something else. He's way more successful now as an independent person. So whatever's going on in your mind, don't let fear overtake anything. If it is, stop watching the news. Take a break, go pray, do something else, and then do something. Until recently in the history of the world, most people did business. That's how they made money. Everybody didn't work for somebody else. And so if billions of people did it before, you can make it too. We'll figure out some way. We'll figure out some way. And now I want to introduce to you Mr. Robert Singletary. He is the president and chief executive officer of Prominence Security. How you doing, sir?
It's great to be here. I appreciate this. It's definitely an honor to be here and to speak about blacks and business and entrepreneurship. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate you being here. And I suppose I want to first start off with you introducing yourself. Just give a bit of overview of who you are, and let us know. You can tell us whatever you want to tell us. Don't feel like you need to hold back. It's like, well, I don't want to boast. No, go ahead and boast. So, we want to hear it. Remember, your testimony may not will be an edification for other people, but when you give it, it'll be a re-edification for you too. So, this is gonna end up being a conversation. I want you to get your words. You may not be able to tell now because I'm talking a lot, but I'm gonna want you to get your words, and I'm gonna want to get what's in your heart and your mind. I'm gonna want to get it out. So don't try to hold it back. I'll squeeze it
Sure.
out of you one way or the other. All right. We need to
Sure.
edify each other. All right. So if you can tell
Absolutely.
us about yourself, sir.
Well, I was born and raised in Florence, South Carolina. I when I turned 18, I went into the military.
Hmm.
I pursued a military career because I just didn't know which direction I wanted to go. Everyone was going to college. Everyone was thinking that that was the path. But at the time, I knew that I just wasn't ready to step in that direction. So I enlisted in the military and just to get a foundation, if you will, because I needed something in my life at that time to where I could figure out things. As I was an 18-year-old kid, so I didn't have a lot of answers, although I may have thought I knew everything at that point in time. But
That
uh,
happens.
yes, it happens, and so uh, upon entering the military, I learned a lot. It was tough going because I enlisted in the mid 90s, 1996. So it was a challenge at first. You have to get used to a new way of life. You have to adjust. You're away from your family, friends. I learned a lot about myself in that time of what
Hmm.
I could definitely endure and withstand, and what I could see myself through. Uh, so in those moments, it was definitely I come from a praying family. I come from a
Great.
family of ministers, and I come from a family that just always we put God first,
Right.
and a family that really believes in faith, having faith, And so I had to apply that. That was one of the
Right.
situations in the military where I had to apply that, going through various situations and, not knowing what the end was going to be, but having faith that everything was going to work out.
Right. Right.
And upon, getting out of the military, I decided that I was just going to do my 8 years, and I did my 8 years. I got out, and
You did
I,
8.
I did eight. I did.
Oh,
I stayed in.
which branch of the military were you?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I was in the army. I enlisted
Okay.
in the army.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. No problem. So yeah, enlisted in the army. Uh, and I went in with a friend, so we kind of did the buddy system, but
Uh,
didn't work out too well because they sent him to a different location than where they sent me. So I was truly alone at that point because I was like, oh man, I
mhm.
think I made a mistake at this point, but.
Right.
But we worked it out. We definitely worked it out, and I did eight, and I was in various locations, and I ended up my last station being in Washington, D.C.,
Uh,
where I currently reside. Um,
you live in Washington now.
yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So I got out of the military because I felt that it was the right time. I had a security clearance. I wanted to utilize it,
Uh,
and I wanted to, get out and use that clearance to the fullest, to in any direction I could. So I made that decision, and I think that was the best decision I made because I would say a month later was we were going to get deployed to Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
So yeah, it's not yeah, so
Remember the time.
yeah, yeah, very the time, and so I got out before they stopped us from being able to get out.
Mm. Mhm.
And the rest, once I got out, I kind of just doing a lot of contract work with FBI at first.
Mhm.
Spent maybe about 2 years doing as a government contractor with the FBI, and moved on from there to actually, with Department of Homeland Security was forming not long after that, and so I, applied and got a job with them, and so. And the rest is kind of history as far as, my transition from, the 18-year-old kid from Florence that, just decided to, he needed something different. So, and that's how I wound up here. And, I thank God really because for guiding me, when I knew I was lost. So when I knew I didn't have all the answers. So
Right. Well, I'm doing the math here.
mm,
Um, a little bit of math.
sure.
You went into the military in '96
Yes.
and you did 8 years.
Mhm.
So I got approximately what your age is here. So you don't have to say directly if you don't want to or anything like that, but maybe you can tell us more about your family situation
Yes,
before we
yes,
go into
sure.
the other person.
Yeah, sure. I have a wife and three children. My wife is Whitney. She is um, the love of my life.
All right.
So, yeah, we have three beautiful boys,
Three
all
boys.
ages 17 and 14 and 6.
All right.
So I almost have an 18-year-old. Yeah,
Almost.
18 in September. So,
Oh,
so
is
steer him a little bit.
all right. Has he
Yeah.
talked about the military or has he got his eyes in other places?
He has his eyes firmly fixed on college. We're looking at some HBCUs
Mm-hmm.
that have piqued his interest.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not be opposed to military, but I would
Mm-hmm.
be opposed if he said he wanted to go into the Army.
Uh-huh.
I think, Air Force
Air
or
Force, Navy.
Navy will be better options.
Right.
So,
No, no,
yeah.
okay. Okay, I'm not sure, but is there anything that the 6-year-old has his eyes on right now?
Oh, wow. Uh, yeah, well, he has his eyes on his seventh birthday party, which he's, been telling us about and
That's a
giving
good place to be. Good
an
place
idea
to be.
of what he wants. Yeah. And my 14-year-old, he's just kind of into gaming right now.
Oh, okay,
So
right.
yeah.
Now, Washington, D.C. I
Yes,
used
sir.
to live there a long time ago.
Ah, yeah,
Said,
okay.
man, I said long like it was 100 years. But anyway, it was decades ago. But anyway, um, as you mentioned, some of the things like security clearance, the FBI, things like that. If I begin to touch on something that's something you pretty like, nah, we better not talk about that. It's just say skip it, go on,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah,
But
no worries.
when I was a child, I used to hear this about people who went into the military. Went away a boy, came back a man. Went away a boy, came back a man. And of course, when I was older, I could see it. I mean, I could see it when I was clear. It's like, that guy was a teenager and he came back, full grown man. What, but about couple of months either. you know, um, how much is the discipline or any other type of training? You talked about the connection as far as FBI and DHS clearances and things like that. How much was and you mentioned that you found out that you could get through some things. How much has your training in the military played in everyday life concerning how you do business?
Wow, yes. It's a lot of the military has truly been ingrained in me, from when I was in, just from a standpoint of just basic things like being on time. We were taught in the military that, early on time was late and early was on time. So, and that was something that they drilled into us, just right out of boot camp. That, punctuality was um, something that was not was what they expected. The other things, from a mental perspective, being put in certain tough situations and just still being composed,
Mhm.
still being yourself and not allowing panic to take over, to overwhelm you.
Mhm.
So those are things, I know for a fact that that military experience, um, you know kind of taught me, and put me in a better space, when I did start to think about building a business. Um, so yeah, so I would say definitely it's still there, it's still in me. I know a lot of people will say, well, you don't look like you don't carry yourself too much like you were in the military. It's because, I like to have fun. I like to, I'm not, just a stick in the mud or anything, but yeah, I like to still look at those things. And those are tr things I value as well.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner, so my job and my job as the chief executive is to ensure that, our contracts, that we have people there that,
Mhm.
share the same values as I do, being
Right.
punctual, being neat and tidy. Appearance is everything in some cases. So that is a lot of what I did take from the military.
I believe that the discipline for a lot of people, the discipline, some of the best employees. Of course, we're talking about an employer, but a lot of employees, they're very good employees because they were in the military.
Yes.
And actually, so when something needs to be done, it's like, man, it's not a question about it's going to get done. It's
Yeah.
going to get done. And so, of course, there's character issues for any specific individual, but as on the whole, there's a lot of really good discipline. The things that we used to think to take for granted, they are not can't be taken for granted anymore, like being on time,
Right.
like telling somebody you're not going to be. The things like that, they show through. Now, how did you? First of all, prominence, security. I have on here president and chief executive officer.
Yeah.
You're also the founder. Is that correct?
I'm also the founder. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So prominence, security. You pick the name.
I picked a name, prominence. I don't know. It just, it came to me. I was thinking of what could be a name that kind of stands out, and that's truly what prominence actually means. Something that stands out, stands apart from the rest. And I
Right.
wanted my company to exude that, um, in every way, shape, or form. I just wanted my company to be that company where when people look to it, they know, okay, this is just not the usual or the typical. This is what you're going to get if you're involved with this company in any way.
Yeah, right. So how long has Prominence been in, or did it have any other name before that?
No, it never had any other name. I founded the business in 2011.
Mhm.
So we're kind of right around that 14-year mark in business. And it was me initially, and I had a partner initially. That's unfortunately no longer a part of the company, but we started out together. And he helped mold my vision in a certain way to make sure things got down on paper, and because it's the best thing is to do is to write things down.
Right.
And and that kind of helps you get moving in the direction of starting to form
Yeah.
the company.
Well, I think it's good for people to hear. You start business with people. You don't They don't necessarily stay, whether it's a partnership or whether they're assistants, even the relationships with people coming in and going out as clients and different things like that. You
Yes.
mentioned that people will say to you, "You don't seem like a military person. You're kind of stick in the mud." I mean, well, there's all kind of personalities that I've seen in the military. So,
Yeah.
how much of do you see uh, your ability to communicate, relate to people? How much is that a part of doing business?
Wow, that's a huge part of doing business as far as being able to communicate and relate to people. Going into meetings with potential clients, you have to establish a rapport.
Right.
You have to understand what their needs are because they have a lot of options. Believe it or not, there are, especially in this area, is very saturated with security companies.
Ah,
Very, very saturated market up here for security companies.
uh, I worked for a couple.
Yeah,
That was in the '80s,
yeah.
early '80s.
So nothing's really changed. There are a lot of companies that are formed, and so people have a lot of options, and it's that establishment of a rapport with people, with potential clients is key. I've gone into a lot of meetings where you didn't feel really real confident about how things were going to turn out. What I try to do is when I go into those meetings, I want to ensure I put my best foot forward.
Right.
I want to explain what we can do, what we bring to the table, and how we can service that particular client. And that's all I can do.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we're not going to get every client, we're not going to win every contract, but I do know if we leave nothing to chance and we put everything out on the table,
Right.
we will definitely increase our chances tenfold.
Right.
So
Great. Well, let's say something. Let's talk about that table that you're bringing something to. Maybe you can tell us more about what it is that you do. This is what do you do supply for clients?
sure. Prominent Security is a multifaceted security company. We provide armed and unarmed physical security support to clients in various industries, warehousing, corporate workplaces, malls, and we do events, wedding receptions, yeah, you name it. So we're multifaceted. We try to be as versatile as we can, and also we do private investigations to where we employ private detectives and take cases and so that's been both parts of the company thus far that we manage properties. We do residential security as well. We manage properties throughout three areas, three locations. We're based in Maryland, DC, and Texas.
Texas, and what part of Texas?
We're kind of throughout Texas. We're in Waco. We're in Houston. We had some contracts in Dallas and in Austin. So
Okay,
yeah,
you're gonna have to tell me how that. Well, we'll come back to tell me how that
sure,
works. But
sure, sure.
with the, I was going to ask you if all of your employees were uniformed.
Yes, most of our employees are uniformed. The officers that are out in the field are uniformed,
Mhm.
equipped with patch, their uniform, duty belt, and that varies, of course, for from assignment to assignment. But a typical armed officer has a duty belt. He has his handcuffs, OC spray, his weapon, of course, a
Right,
baton. So just a number of things that he or she may need while on duty.
right.
Um,
So when you work with PIs, is that more of a collaboration? Do you hire the PI, or is there a collaboration on you have part of the information, they have part of the information, you work together for a client? How does that work?
but the thing about
Private investigator.
yes, the thing about being in the security industry is you meet a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, law enforcement, military, you name it.
Mhm.
And so over the years, I've established contact with a lot of private investigators. Some
Wow.
actually I've employed. I think at the time we had about f five or six private investigators that were directly, employees of prominence. So with that, we definitely had enough at the time to kind of, take on, multiple cases at a time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now, with the uniformed officers, is there a I want to say a specific amount that you have that work for you? Well, maybe there is, but
Yeah.
if not, is there like a certain range that you deal with for the most part, at least these days, and maybe some insight on how that's changed over the last 14 or so years?
Wow. Yes. Initially, when we started, I didn't have a lot of people uh, that were working for the company. Contracts were sporadic. I
Mhm.
think in the early years,
Right.
and they tell you, if you're in business, the first 3 years are going to be hectic. If you can get past about 3 years, then you kind of get your footing.
Mhm.
For us, really and truly, it was about 5 years before we truly got our footing. We would get small contracts here and there, and primarily I work them.
Right.
Um, because feel like, hey, this is my company, so I have to put into it. I have to put skin in the game just like anybody else.
I've seen it before. I mean,
Yes.
if you're not good enough to work there, why would anybody?
Well, exactly. So there were times where I would hire people that taught me a valuable lesson. I would hire people and not really thoroughly vet them and thoroughly um, interview them, but I just needed someone in a position, and then of course that would backfire on me, and then I had to go in myself because they didn't show up.
Right.
So, lessons were learned there, but I would not take those lessons back for the world. I'm thankful for um, having to go through those situations where I had to go out, and be away from my family and stand at a post or
Right.
stand in some store just doing security.
Yeah.
So.
Well, back in the day, I made a lot of overtime because of people who didn't come in. So I mean,
Absolutely. Now, see, as an owner, I don't like overtime.
there you're right, right. I was on the other end. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
as a poor young dude, I want some
yeah,
overtime.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
I um, where was I going with this? So in more recent years,
Mhm.
uh, now from 2011 to this point, the Washington D.C. area is dense with anything that has to do with security, anything that has to do with law enforcement. I think when I was there was like 26 different known agencies, part of the government that
Yeah.
could arrest you. Now I don't know why it was important to us, but but so I'm sure there's a whole lot more now, and different things like that. But uh, has has the nature of how many people you need changed much over over the last, say, 3 to 5 years? Whether it's because of more clientele, because of something you're doing differently, or the arena of what people are using, because there's a lot of security now that has to do with people not being there.
Yeah. And it's a bit of both. Of course, I have more contracts and more projects. So, I definitely needed to increase my workforce.
Hmm.
Right now, I think we are around 80, 81 employees as of right now, and probably in the next 3 to 4 months, we'll probably be looking well over 100 because of some contracts that we have incoming. But and of course the landscape does change, from
Hmm.
time to time when it comes to the security industry. Whatever's happening in the world, people adjust to it. Unfortunately, it does benefit security companies at times where something's happening, people get a little leery about the ongoings of certain things, and they think they need to beef up their security or have it in general. So that does come into play, and you'll see those peaks where you'll get calls, the phone is ringing, pretty often, and sometimes there are those where there's a lag. You're like, okay, seems like we're pretty stagnant right now. So we need to go get out here and do a little bit of marketing and put ourselves out there just so we can try to um, you know. Uh, have as many contracts across the board. But I will say this, it's important to have steady growth. Sometimes you have to maintain a balance. If you go too fast, and I've experienced this, if you grow too fast, then you're not equipped for that growth.
Hmm.
Um, in the form of, okay, I have to hire these people, I have to pay out this money because and it's like it's too fast. You did not establish the infrastructure that you needed to establish in order to be prepared for that work.
Hmm. Hmm.
So um, I do believe that uh, we have to always check the pulse of what's going on and go for the right things for the right contracts. Every contract we don't take, even if it's offered to us. We're very selective at times on the certain types of contracts we take because um, it's we've been doing this long enough to know now, or if this is going to be profitable, or is this going to be more hassle than what it's worth? And you have to make those calls
Hmm.
because if you jump out there and try to jump on everything, then it's not going to end well as far as affecting cash flow, affecting just the people you're putting in place there, and it's just gonna be a bad situation. And it's all about branding at the end of the day. We want to maintain our brand, and we want to ensure that we're putting out quality
Yeah.
services.
Yeah. You don't want somebody to hear that name and be like, "Oh no, no."
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So from the period of time when you left the military and when you began your company, was it flushed just straight through, or was there something else that was going on in between there? Was it straight jump from one to the other?
So when I left the military, I didn't have a company. I just jumped into the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
contracting and government work for a while. And it was when I met a certain individual. He was in the military, but he retired before I got out. But he told me, he said, "Hey, call me when you get out. Call me when you get out of military service." So I was like, at first I thought, okay, this is not, this guy's kind of Hollywood talk, let's meet for
Yeah,
lunch.
come hit me up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, but he was a good guy, he was a mentor to me. And so when I did get out, I did pick up the phone, I called him, and he got me a job doing security, doing access control for a government or corporate company at the time. So
Hmm.
uh, that's how I started. And so when I got into that industry, I liked it. I thought, okay, this is a nice fit for me.
Hmm.
I was learning a lot, learning on the job about various things that were security related, and that really kind of planted the seed for me, if you will. I still didn't know at that time that I would form a company,
Hmm.
but I think the seed even subconsciously was planted
uh,
uh, around that time, and a few years kind of passed, and I just, I s- I sat in my apartment one night and I thought long and hard about whether I should make that leap, take that step. I didn't know. I didn't really have a business background
mhm,
at the time, so I I just prayed on it, and I said, I'm gonna go and register, and I'm
mhm,
going to so I did my research, and that's when I actually formed a company in 2011.
mhm. Now, I had the question on here. I was going to ask you about different mentors. You mentioned this that this gentleman was a type of was a mentor or a type of mentor to you. At the time, did you know that, or is that something you look back on as like more so uh, than you thought?
I knew that at the time.
Right.
I absolutely knew that at the time, when he and I were in the military together. He was in the Air Force, I was in the Army, but we were at a joint base.
Okay.
And we became fast friends, and you know, he was he was older, he was a little older than me. He was about maybe 15 years my senior.
Hmm.
And so, he kind of guided me on certain things, helped me through some certain things, helped me understand certain things.
Hmm.
And so I quickly realized that he was indeed my mentor.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's good to good to recognize that early. Were there okay? You mentioned when you went into it, you realized, okay, I like this arena, which is probably good. I don't know if you're going to, if somebody says they want to go into business, probably not to choose something you don't like. So,
Yeah.
but people, and that sounds crazy, but people do.
People do. People
They,
absolutely do. They think it's a moneymaker.
yeah,
Uh, they may necessarily not care for it, but they'll do it.
yeah,
I couldn't see myself in that light as far as doing something that I wasn't going to be passionate about. Um, I think if you're passionate about being a business owner and going into business, at least do something that you're going to be passionate about and be thorough and going to enjoy doing,
right,
even because that's what's going to sustain you when you hit those hard times.
right. Now, after starting the business, uh, well, it's been 14 years now. Add on 3 from before you started. You got you're pushing almost 20 years, and it's coming out of the military.
Yes.
Wait, was any part of the skill set from the military that actually uh, flowed well into this? Did you look back on and say, okay, that kind of works out, or was it not so much? Mostly just the connection to this fellow.
Um, I would say, I would say, yeah. For me, with the military, what military brought to me, the skill sets as far as we had to do, we had to do patrols, we had to do we had to do guard duty whenever we went to, um, you know, to what we called it was a field problem where we actually had to go into the woods for about 30 to 45 days. You had to pull guard duty.
Lovely, wonderful, wonderful.
You had to pull guard duty. You had
Right.
to, um, and that's a basic, military, that's a basic security function.
Yep.
So didn't even know that at the time, but you look back and say, okay, wow, that's one of the first instances where I was actually doing security, walking around with a weapon, staying up, being alert,
Looking for things that most people aren't looking for.
yes, things out of place. So that was the foundation, I believe did occur in the military.
Mhm. Now, were there other mentors, whether it's directly connected to um, this particular business or not? Were there other mentors, whether it was before military or even after you became a business owner? Have there been other mentors that you've been around?
Yes. Sure, yes. I had at least two other mentors. One mentor was, really early on, before I built a business. He had a business of his own.
Mm.
He was an entrepreneur, and um, he and I, would speak on certain things. He was doing some MLM stuff,
So,
but I
so
wasn't.
what stuff was that?
Multi-level management, I think, and it was more
Multi-level.
like, if
Okay,
you're
right.
looking at Quick Star and
Got it.
look, yeah, so those types of businesses, but
Mhm.
I really wasn't into kind of doing that particular business. But he would definitely routinely, try to get me to come to meetings, and
Mhm.
but he definitely was, he had other businesses outside of that, and he would, talk to me. We would have conversations for hours about, various things business related. And, if I ever wanted to do something like this, these are the things that I would have to look for. So he definitely became a mentor to me as well. Another mentor I had was an actual someone that actually did have a security company
Mhm.
early on when I got started. And when I didn't really know how to do where to go find contracts, or uh, he kind of he kind of took me by the hand a little bit, um, and he said, "Okay, how about start here?
Mm.
How about look here?"
Mhm.
Up until that point, no one had kind of taken me by the hand and said, "Okay, let's go here," because it was so competitive.
Right.
um, you know, um, and that's an issue. That's an issue that I
You
had
don't want to help the
initially.
competition.
Yeah, you don't want up the competition, but I promised myself that I would not be that particular owner.
Great.
I wouldn't
Great.
be. So over the years, I have helped other companies that were my direct competitors,
Right.
but I have collaborated with them so that we all could make a profit and make money.
Yeah. That's it.
Yes.
That's the ecosystem we really need around the entire community. So we're talking about Black History Month. You
Yes.
let somebody in, as you said earlier, you're not going to get all the contracts. Yeah,
No.
but you can tell somebody else, hey, maybe you ought to check it out. Maybe you'll get it. And the same
Yes,
thing happens in the other directions
absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everybody eats. I want to ask you a couple of questions about education,
Sure.
maybe in two different. First one is, did you go uh, either after the military, during the military, or before starting a company? Did you need to go get certain type of degree, certifications, different things like that? And then also afterwards, what's been the deal with ongoing education as far as it applies to what you need to do?
And so when I was in the military, I did start my um I did I did get enrolled into college. I took a few classes, then I jumped out. Then once I got out of the military, and I started working. I was in the workforce, and I think this was around 2007. I was in the workforce. I was working for I was at DHS, and it was a wake up call for me. I applied for a criminal investigator job,
Mhm.
uh, where they said that, okay, you can apply for the job, and we'll send you to yeah, we'll send you to criminal investigator school for a few months, and then you come back, you get the job. So I applied, everything was going well. I spoke with one of the recruiters, and everything was great. They were like, "Hey, man, you got a military background. That's a plus. You're already in the government, also a plus. And we can definitely send you to the school, and you'll be working here at this location." But she says, I just have a question on where you went to school. And
Mhm.
I said, "I'm sorry." She says, "Yes, what is your degree in?" And I said, "Oh, I I don't have a degree. I thought that I didn't need a degree for this to go to the school. She says, yes, you didn't need a degree to go to the school, the
Mm-hmm.
criminal investigator school, but you need a degree to hold the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I missed an incredible opportunity because I didn't have my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard an old phrase. Someone said, when opportunity and preparedness meet, that's when success will happen.
Right.
And I wasn't prepared. The opportunity was there, but I wasn't
Yeah.
prepared. So I was pretty crushed with that because it was a job that I had my eye on. I really wanted it, and that right there lit a fire. And I think a few days later is when I enrolled in college, and I got my criminal justice degree. I got my bachelor's in criminal justice. And once I got that, I was like, I'll never be unprepared again if another
Mm-hmm.
opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Um,
say that phrase you said a minute ago. Uh, when
oh, when opportunity and preparedness meet, that's when success will happen.
right.
And I truly believe that phrase. I believe wholeheartedly in it,
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen even recently where in this business things can happen fast,
Mm.
and if you're not prepared, you will not get that contract,
Uh-huh.
or you'll go into that contract, on shaky ground.
Right.
And going back a little bit as far as the educational piece, when I started my company, um, I did go and get my master's in business,
Oh, excellent.
because I figured that I need to add that piece,
Right.
so I could, at least have a working knowledge of how things should run.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is theory, of course. Once you
Yeah.
get out there,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. I was
yeah,
going to say something.
once you get out there, it's really OJT.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wouldn't take it back. I think it was a critical piece that I needed, and
Well, I was going to ask is when you got the masters, I mean, it's a absolutely a great achievement. It involves real work, and it's not just pick A, B, C, or D. It's a real thing. So, but I was going to ask, okay, did that particular degree did that add more to your knowledge of how to do it, or did that add more knowledge to how to get in the door?
Yeah, so it really didn't add more to how to do it per se from an operational piece, but from an administrative piece or understanding cash flow,
Mm-hmm.
sure, yeah, it definitely kicked in. It applied there,
Great.
um, to the inner workings of structure and the financial piece and what to, and how to work your numbers to a degree and to where you're going to be profitable. It does help. So it did come in handy in that area.
Right. Great. That's I'm thinking about the flexibility when you mentioned things can change pretty fast. And
Yes.
you said about preparedness, and I was thinking earlier today is like something I think about often, and sometimes I act upon, but often think about it and have for years, which is that saying that if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Gotta get
So,
ready. Absolutely.
but flexibility. Now you are in Washington. You are in the DMV. You
Yeah.
are in the area where uh, the government of governments worldwide. I mean, everybody's government around the world even hangs around in DC.
Yes.
So it's a place for when the DC area. We watch things on the news. When I lived there all of those years ago, I realized that everybody else in the country didn't even see the news that I saw. The news was different. Now things are
Yeah.
different now because of how you get the news.
Yes, of course.
But there
Yeah.
would be stuff that happened on the mall every day. There was stuff that happened in DC every day. There was stuff that happened in DMV every day. You got 10 major colleges every day. There's people who come from Bangladesh and Oklahoma to have their say every day.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and so it's a very active place for many reasons. But the government part to me, the legality part, things change. If you're a cop in Kankakee, Illinois, you still have to keep up on what the changes are on what you can do and what you can't do,
Right.
what the new policies are and different things like that. Maybe that's for a department, but it could also be for new standard operating procedure for everybody. And
Absolutely.
so how is it keeping up with that? Because something can happen on the news one day, and then everybody involved with either policing or security decides that day, okay, I'm not going to end up in court, so we're going to start.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to definitely keep up on the policies because they will change.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that's inevitable, change. I mean, so with that, I have a pretty good team that, ex-military guys, ex-law enforcement guys, who kind of they keep their eyes open, their ears open. We stay in connection with our well, in Maryland, the Maryland State Police, in DC, the Metropolitan Police Department, and in Texas, the Department of Public Service. So we stay in constant kind of contact with these various agencies because things do change. Just this year, there's a new mandate on security officers and their training. They have to, they are now required to get a certification in order before they go on the job. That is Maryland mandate from the Maryland State Police. And they can't just go to anyone and get this training. It has to be specialized training that has to be approved by the Maryland State Police. So we saw the writing on the wall, and what we did was we went and we applied to be an agency that could provide said training. Because we're always looking to be as versatile as we can.
Right.
So that is another, we established a prominent security training facility about a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago, Prominence
security
Training Center.
facility. Yeah, we established that about a year and a half ago to where we could not only internally train our officers on the various rules of engagement, continuum of force, and how, just basic, customer service, but it's not just for our internal officers. Any officer that's out there can come and receive our training. Now, of course, they have to pay a training fee, obviously, because we have to purchase materials and things of that nature. But we are reasonable with our pricing as far as because we understand these officers are here trying to make a living, and this is their livelihood. So we're not trying to break the bank as far as what we charge them coming in the door. But we saw it writing on the wall, we got in front of it, and I think we're only a few agencies now to date that actually can provide that training in the Maryland, in the state of Maryland, I should say.
Okay.
So yeah, it's always good to be on top of these policies. So one, you never know if it's going to be another avenue of revenue, or you never know that it could keep you from legal jeopardy. So you have to be, out there making sure that you stay abreast of everything that's going on.
Now, you mentioned you don't know when something's going to end up being another avenue for income, for a flow. And right now, across the country, it's not a political statement. It's just a statement about life. Sometimes, if you've only been alive for like 20 or 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever amount of time you've been alive, there's a possibility to say, hey, I never saw this before. But you have to think, okay, has this happened before? Most things, yes, it has happened before. And sometimes it's happened in your lifetime and you forgot. So,
absolutely.
So there's a lot going on now, and because of times we're living in, we can miss the things that have happened before, or even when something hasn't happened before. We get principles. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, you got to do something, or you're just going to watch. So a lot of people, and you're in Washington D.C., a lot of people they're kind of in limbo. I got friends who they've served 20, 25 years in the military. They got 10, 20 years in other areas, and they're watching. It's like, hey, it's close to time to retire. I hope I don't get laid off. Different things like that. That's going
Yeah.
on. That really is
Well,
going on. And so the unknown factor. What's going to happen to me now? What's going to happen because of this institution? My whole life, they never did this with this institution. My whole life, they never
right.
did that with that institution. My whole life, this was always the way that it was going to work. But I'm from Michigan. People were working a whole bunch of years, and then all of a sudden, and getting good pensions, and then all of a sudden, like millions of jobs disappeared,
Yes.
and people just still decided to do something else. Some did better, some not better. But what is going on now? The idea that you mentioned about being flexible, things can change fast. Preparedness. There's I'm talking so much now. It's like I almost forgot where I was going on this.
No, you're fine.
It's like maybe I need to get up and go do something, which maybe I do. But when you mention that you don't know, there's people right now who don't know what they're going to do, but if they get out of there, when you mentioned the military, you said, you learn not to, I'll use the word freak out.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So if you're in the military, you learn how to be disciplined. You got your training, and you know that if something comes up, maybe you have two choices, maybe you have five choices, but freaking out ain't never one of the choices.
That one,
So,
that one. Not
right,
an option.
right. And so it's a good time for people to think about that part. It's natural to be to have your head turned about whatever's going on around you, whether it's on your block, whether it's at the national level, different things like that. But okay, after your head is turned, you're still gonna need to do something.
Gotta
so
do something. Gotta do
so
something.
so I'm going as you working in that area. Before we get off, I want to pray about your business, and for anybody else as well,
Sure, sure.
because it is uncertain times, so to
Very
speak.
much so.
But there's been a whole bunch of uncertain times. Lest we
Yes,
forget that we have a testimony. There has been a whole bunch of uncertain times, and
absolutely.
so well, we don't have to get off on that. But security clearances, FBI, different things like that. I have a friend who's up there where you live, and we're together we joke about this is that he has these different security clearances, and he was always just an affable guy, easy to get along and stuff like that. And we're always joking about stuff, and you ask him certain questions, and he'll be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Change the subject. But there's you don't have to go into it as far as how it applies to you personally, or feel free to. The
Sure.
different changes that are going on now, or even with this president in the past, he's changed some of the situations as far as security clearances, particularly when it has to do with CIA, FBI, people like that. Uh,
Mhm.
has that had an effect on where you are, or not so much in what you do?
Um, yeah, so having a clearance, it hasn't had any impact on me as of yet, or my agency, not to say that things can't change. But as far as that's concerned, that's been still in place, and things are still ongoing as kind of business as usual.
Mhm.
So it hasn't been an impact there yet. And I'm
Great,
thankful for that.
great, great. Now in 1982, I was commissioned by Catholic University of America with as a police officer, and so
Okay.
uh, I'm just throwing that out there because I don't know what's going on. I might show up and put in an application, so you let me know how my what I need to polish up on, different things like that.
No, you're great.
You have different avenues that you send people in. Is there a certain age range that you? Now I know that you can't discriminate on the basis of age, but for what the types of job that you have available for the people who work for you or to collaborate with, um, are there any types of limitations?
Not necessarily. We try to be accommodating, especially from an age perspective. I mean, we have people working for us as young as 19.
Right.
We have a guy working for us that's he's close to 80. and literally, and so
He could be my mentor.
so and people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, cultures, races and everything. So we definitely we are very, I guess, diverse. I know that's a scary word these days, but
It doesn't have to be,
we
but yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to be. But we don't. Our position is if you come to us, you put an application with us, and it's a for position that we have open. If you can do the job, if you it can exhibit that skill set that we're looking for. That is, and we can get a good idea of what type of employee you will be. Whether that is calling references or asking you
Mhm.
detailed questions during the interview, which is what we do. We've tailored our interview to kind of dig a little as far as um, what people will do in certain situations, scenario-based questions that will tell us a lot about how someone would approach a situation. You never know in this industry if
Mhm.
you are a security officer what you're going to face
Right,
there in on somebody's property. We've
right.
had a number of things happen. I've had we had our first officer involved shooting
Hmm.
about 3 years ago. And that was very, like
Pretty
that
rigorous.
was a scary, crazy situation because, there's so many moving parts. Law enforcement is now involved.
Yeah,
Your officer is traumatized
it's a
because
different world.
yeah, it's a different world. So, having to navigate that situation definitely taught us a lot. But it also showed us, like, yes, you can never be complacent in this industry. I want people that are alert. I want people that are attention to detail. I don't want people that they just say, okay, I just got this job and I'm just going to sit here
Mm,
and just, well, quote unquote, make some easy money.
mm,
No, we require detailed reports when our officers are on duty. Everything's technology based, so you can do anything through an app. So we require, rounds to be made. Everything is GPS. I have all my officers are when they clock in, they're on their GPS. I can see your location. I can see your movement. I can see when you going here, going there, and I can tell if you're in one place. Uh, we've had officers back in the day. They would try anything. Oh, I'm going to clock in from home.
I'm
Uh,
at home
yeah. So
drinking Kool-Aid.
yeah. So you make everything a little GPS based now. It's like, well, you
Mhm,
can't clock in from your house, so you have to
mm,
be there. So you have to put those things in place
mhm,
to ensure that um, you can maintain your relationships, your positive relationships with your clients. Clients are looking,
mhm.
they see that security officer that may be sleeping on the job.
Right.
Um, it's going to happen. It's what I will tell anyone that wants to get into this industry and own and operate a security company. You're going to have people are going to be people. One
Yeah.
thing I always say is that your your best asset is your people,
Right.
and sometimes it could be your worst.
Yours.
So, because I've lost a contract based on something an employee did, um, and it was unfortunate, and couldn't be undone. So,
Right.
that has been an experience of mine. So we're very, um, you know, um,
There is
we
a cost to be the boss.
there's a cost to be boss, and it's
Yes.
and it's ongoing. So you just have to be steadfast.
Hmm. Now, when before you had the company, whether it's when you were a child or not, did you see yourself as a person that was going to have your own business? When did that idea, was it in youth, or is it just before it happened, or was it one day when you're on day 41 in the military out there in the woods? Or so?
No, I think as a child growing up in South Carolina, I did myself, even if it was subconsciously being a business owner,
Hmm.
or to some degree being my own boss. I mean,
Hmm.
And I tell people this, I've told my wife this, like when I was a child, I would say maybe 11, 12 years old, my dad was a hunter, is a hunter.
Hmm.
I grew up hunting. So I would, be around my grandmother's house, shooting squirrels and
Ah,
and rabbit and all that stuff. And
mhm.
even at that time, I had clientele. I had people that wanted to purchase these squirrels from me. I had standing orders.
All
Uh,
right.
I would go and say, okay, how many do you want today? I was
Right.
very confident, and they were like, well, give me two today. Okay,
Right.
well, I'll go out and get you two. And I never missed a quota. I
Right. All
remember.
right.
So that was, and then of course at school, you're selling candy, moon pies and things like that, to your,
Mhm.
your fellow classmates and making a little money that way. But yeah, so I think from an early age,
Mhm.
I had that entrepreneurial spirit
Mhm.
to want to go out and, just make money um, and can just be my own boss to a certain degree. So yeah, definitely early
Okay.
on.
All right. Now move a little further from the time that you began the company to where you are now. If you could go
Mhm.
back to the time when you first started, what is the most or maybe most important thing or things that you'd be able to tell yourself in retrospect from the
Mm.
time that you began as now being an owner as opposed to the person who's going to be an owner? Uh, if you're talking to yourself, what would you be
Oh
saying?
wow, yeah, that's a great question. I think I would tell myself the one that's getting ready to embark on being a business owner too. You have to be patient. You have to
Mm,
be patient. Um, you have to be diligent. You have to put thought into certain things. You should not rush. I there were many times where I rushed into something
mm,
because the excitement of
mm,
getting this contract and going back to what I said, previously about rushing into something and not being prepared.
right,
I think that's what I would tell. That's one of the things I would tell myself. Also, would I would tell myself that in this business you have to forecast. You have to plan for the future. You have to say, um, hey, this is what I want. Set goals also. Definitely would tell myself to set goals. But set goals and forecast and put things on paper, write things down. I never realized how powerful that is,
write it down.
writing things down. You can visualize it and it can be a concept in your head, but until I opened my notepad and I wrote things down, that's when things started moving. And I would definitely tell myself to just pray,
Right,
pray, ask God for guidance, ask God to order your steps. Um, that is, I think, very imperative, um, and that's a crucial part of it. We're not. I try to remind myself I'm not doing this on my own. Um, I don't do this without his favor.
right,
And if I stick to that, then I'll understand that, if I put him first, then everything will work out. Sometimes I've gone after a contract and wondered why I didn't get it. Why didn't I
mm,
get it? Everything laid out. Didn't realize it wasn't for me.
ah,
Realize if had I gotten that contract, things would have happened unfavorably. And I just have to I always say, well, thank you, God, because
all
that
right.
you steered me away from a potential catastrophe.
Right,
So I definitely um, would tell myself to always put God first in everything that you do. Always, be patient, write things down, forecast,
right,
and you know, and just make sure you surround yourself with the best people. That is another crucial area of business. Surrounding yourself with people that have your values
right,
and your mission, and they want to achieve it just as much as you do.
right,
And I think that's where my leadership team is right now. They want to achieve. They're pushing, my dream, but I always tell them it's at this point, it's our dream.
Mhm.
It's not just my dream, it's our dream. We're collectively pushing toward this goal.
Right,
And
right,
once you align yourself and have those people in your employ, I think your business will go far.
great, great. Well, Mr. Singletary, we are at an hour now, but I want to ask you if you're good for 10 more minutes. However, if you're not good for 10 more minutes, God still loves you. We
Oh,
still bless you.
I'm
But
good for 10 more minutes.
all right,
Absolutely.
praise God. We love you more now.
No worries.
All right, praise God. There's a term people use now. Well, I probably maybe they've used it all the time, and they use it very fanciful language. So I'll just make it plain. Though people say,
Sure.
well, there's levels to this. There's
There's
levels to this. So I want you to think about this um, uh, concerning levels. What I would call people or situations that were deciding factors, or there was a break that caused you to get through, move to another level, things along that line. Any of them stand out?
Yes, I can think of one that stands out as far as
Now, and I say this because earlier you talked about we talked about preparedness, and there was a situation you walked in, everything is perfect,
Mhm.
and maybe that was supposed to be a break. In retrospect, maybe that was not supposed to be for you. It was supposed to be a learning lesson, a lesson learned, what have you.
Yes.
But we can come and say, "Oh, I this didn't happen." But the breaks, even when the breaks come, it could have, you could have missed
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Um, Case in point, a few years ago, I hired a guy who we met through. I put out an ad in his company. He was working with another security company at the time, and he basically um, that didn't work out, and he wanted to come work for me. He became, a good friend, and became one of my lead private investigators. But he had a friend in Texas. That's kind of going back to how we
Oh yeah.
established in Texas. He had a friend in Texas that they were getting ready to form a security company in Texas.
Mm,
He said, "Hey, I want you to speak with this guy because I think you guys are on the same page with a lot of things, and maybe there could be some collaboration with with us and their company in Texas." Um, so I spoke to this guy, and he definitely was close to. He had his company was already registered, and he was close to putting everything together. But he and I had one conversation, and after that conversation, he says, I think I'm going to fold my company
mm,
and work for you
mm.
and push your company here out in Texas. Now, at first I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I was a little
Yeah,
hesitant.
you didn't actually offer that. He just said,
Yeah, I
"Yeah."
didn't offer that. I said, whoa, hey, I don't want you to drop what you're doing. But I thought about it a little bit, and I came back and I said, well, he's there in Texas. I've spoken with him. He has an extensive background in security. He worked for one of the largest firms, security firms in the country that
Mm,
has worldwide contracts.
mm,
So he knew what he was doing. He knew how to manage. He knew how to put things together to bring people together. So um, I decided. I said, I'm gonna. Someone just told me go ahead and accept that offer that he's making you, and I
mm,
did. And I can tell you right now, because I've done that, um, our my company has exploded
mm.
in the state of Texas, to a degree that I didn't even see.
Wow.
And I can trace that back to just that decision I made,
Mm,
to bring him in as a part of our
mm.
company. This guy could work anywhere he wants.
Right,
He has the skill set, he brings value, he brings a lot to the table.
right.
But he wanted to push, my company and align with my dream.
Mm. Now, how long ago was that?
That was in 2022.
Wow,
Yeah, well,
2022.
2021, I'm sorry, 2021.
2021, another year where people are saying, what am I going to do?
What am I
What am I
going to
going to
do?
do?
Yeah.
You'll
And
do something.
yeah, and to not leave this part out, and this is one of the low points of my business. I think around 2019,
Hmm.
2020, we had zero contracts. You know,
Wow.
I had some early success in like 2016, 2017.
Hmm.
Those contracts fizzled because they just ran their course.
Hmm.
And for like the better part of 2 years, it was just, a small contract here, the event here, nothing of any substance. And at that point in 2020, I was putting out more money than we were bringing in.
Don't want to be there.
Don't want to be there. So it was more of a detriment at that point to my family and to our life
Right.
because I'm putting out money that we need in our household for a company that's not producing. Not
Right.
There's nothing coming in. And now you have to ask yourself, is this a business or is this a hobby?
Uh,
The hobby costs you money. Business
right.
makes you money. So I had to pray. I really did. My wife and I had a conversation. She says you need to decide what you're going to do. I'll support you either way. And it was a very low point for me. I prayed about that, long and hard, extensively. Was um, it was definitely a time where I almost I almost hung it up. I
Right.
almost closed the doors, and um, but something told me, and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to pray on this thing, and whatever direction that I'm led, I'm gonna follow suit. And over a couple of days, something told me, don't let this go.
Right.
And I knew it was God. Like, don't let
Right.
this go. Like it's coming. Be patient. Yeah, it's not yet your season.
Mm.
Uh, and around that time, and towards the end of that year, things started turning around. Towards the end of 2020, got first got our first long-term contract. Then that turned into two long-term contracts, and then 2021 is when I acquired the gentleman I was saying from Texas, and so things started kind of pick up, and I can look back and say that, if I hadn't been led to that decision, none of this would be possible.
That's great. They I want to say that these are testimonies. The word does say that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimonies. Now we overcome by our testimonies because of the blood of the Lamb, but we also overcome by other people's testimonies. So everything that Mr. Singletary is sharing right now, for anyone who's listening right now, and again, at a time when you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? Maybe you're not concerned about all the stuff that you're hearing in the news or low, but you're still in a position where you think, what am I going to do now? The testimony, he said, pray, get some quiet. Don't listen to noise.
Listen to noise. You keep blocking
different
out.
different things like that. Check your heart. Do you have something in mind that you're just not telling anybody that you really want to do? Well, be honest with yourself because God already knows you want to do it
Yeah.
anyway. So these
That's
little details like that. Because at the beginning of this, I had mentioned it. In the history of the world, most of the time in the history of the world, most people did work for themselves.
sure.
There's
Yeah.
been tremendous numbers of kingdoms, and most of them were ran by slaves and peasants, but most people worked for themselves.
Yes.
And so, whatever's going on right now, if it's because of outside forces or an inside pull, if it's a time for you to make some type of step and you believe that you're supposed to be doing something in business, as we celebrate this Black History Month, I would say tomorrow begins Women's History Month. I consider Madam C.J. Walker. I know whenever I hear her name and somebody says she was the first Black woman, no. We know that the word self-made millionaires is kind of like oxymoron. Nobody makes it by themselves, not on earth. But
So,
for that term, and we know what it's supposed to mean. No, she was the first self-made woman millionaire, period, in the
period.
United States. Any of them before that? There's one that was possibly before that, but she was a Black woman too.
Yes.
so, so if we celebrate these things, recognize whatever kind of situation you're in, whether it's or whatever you're thinking about in these areas, gifts, talents, different treasures, different ways of doing things. Uh, Mr. Singletary said he found out, hey, I kind of like this. There was a drawing on it. Then there was a grace of God, different areas and things like that. These days, I would throw this out there because I believe it's going to be important in coming days for different people to just to be informed about what's out there.
Right.
There's a guy named John Hope Bryant. You may find on just Google it. Uh, uh, People like Killer Mike. You may not be crazy about the way he talks, but both of them are being mentored by Andrew Young, who did a whole lot of stuff that made Atlanta a little old southern town, and now it's one of the giants in the world.
Yes, a mecca.
Yeah. So I just named a few people. It was just a few black people who said, okay, let's do something here. Let's try this. In busiest airport in the world. Businesses. When I was in high school, everybody was going to Houston and everybody was going to Atlanta. 50 years later, people are still going to Atlanta. And guess what? Texas is still on the come up again. So
There, yep.
so I would ask right now for Mr. Robert Singletary, the president, chief executive officer, and founder of Prominent Security. Anything you want to share? Uh, Words of wisdom. If it's not words of wisdom, it can be. Well, there's going to be words of wisdom no matter what. So, anything else that you'd like to share, feel free.
I would like to say, we are in uncertain times. Everybody's being kind of, shaken and kind of off kilter. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of confusion. Um, there are the questions of what am I going to do if, um, and I think these are the times where one should look inward. One should pray and ask for guidance as far as their next steps. This may be that time to where you were not going to do it when you were comfortable, and now you have to do it because you're uncomfortable.
All right.
Um, and it's like you never know where that push is going to come from. I just say take the time, be bold. If you have a dream, if you have a goal, nothing, there's nothing that says you cannot do this, you cannot achieve this. I still have goals. I still have things that I would like to achieve. I still consider us being to be a small business, and I want to continue to grow and expand. And I do feel like I want to use this business um, to glorify God in any way, shape, or form that we can through this business. And I ask him daily, hey, whatever you want me to do, whatever you direction you need me to go, just lead the way. I think people in this day and age, they just need to. There's so many ways, so many things that people can do, so many talented individuals out here, that can, use their talents in a meaningful way that um, can definitely get them from point A to B. I encourage them, to just go out and do it. Don't overthink it. But do your research. Of course, I'll never tell anyone not to do their research and not to put forth the effort into getting anything lifted off the ground, because you need to do that. You don't go in ignorant. Don't go in half prepared. You definitely need to ensure that whenever you do step out there, you're going to be putting your best foot forward. And I think I've made a lot of mistakes. Up until this point, I made a lot of mistakes. And sometimes, though, you need to make those mistakes. I mean, those mistakes have been um, the best teachers for me. Um, could I change it if I could? Yes, absolutely. I would.
Yeah.
Some of those potholes, man,
Yeah.
I wish I could have steered clear of. You know,
Uh,
but I I'm open to, always sharing my experience, always if anybody's willing to, ask me questions, I'm always open to provide the best answer I can, or at least get you to someone I know that can answer your question. So
Mm.
yeah, so I definitely think I do thank you for this opportunity
Yeah,
for me to come on this platform and share a bit about myself and my company. I do think we need to celebrate more, and we need to give people the flowers while they're alive. And
mm,
I think definitely we need to just understand that we are, things look a little dim right now, but we are still a people that have risen out of the ashes each and every time. So people shouldn't lose faith. No matter what, God is still God.
right,
So,
right.
but I definitely I do thank you, and I do want to thank my parents. They have done a lot for me. They've mentored me. They've made sure I had the best upbringing, and and just how I treat people and how I go about just celebrating people. I owe a lot of that to my parents.
Praise God. Give that honor. Got to give that honor. Now, I want to ask you one more question as I think about this, and then I'm going to say a word as we go off. And I thank you very much for coming here and being open and sharing. You're in the security business, so I mean, that the thought of it's like, okay, I'm going to go into a place where I don't want to talk about this, don't talk about that. But you've been very gracious in sharing this information. And now, to whom much is given, much is required. And your job does involve a tremendous amount of responsibility, not simply because you have employees, but also because of that, you're a father, a husband, uh, and then the lives of the people who are connected to your employees, as well as the part that we talked about, just the nature of the responsibility that has to do with policing, security, protect, investigation, all those different things like that. So when I ask the question, that's a lot. So I'm going to ask you, do you get sleep?
Yeah, I try to make sure I get enough sleep. I mean, sometimes the phone rings
Mm-hmm.
constantly at night, and you never know what that call is.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely have to take the call. But I'm blessed to have certain people in place that are those who take the brunt of those calls, and they handle and
Right.
address the things that need to be addressed. So I am thankful in that regard. So I do get a decent amount of sleep, thankfully. Not early on, but right, but now I do.
That's great to hear. Once again, this is New Covenants Community Connect. I want to thank Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette for making this platform possible. And then I got the instruction who the guests would be, and it's just been a great interaction here. And I also want to declare just tremendous blessing, increase, and continued success in all the areas of your life: protection, health, wisdom, continue that you already have, but continue to grow in a humility that allows God to heap upon you more and more to his glory, but for absolutely for your good and the good of all those who are connected to you. Just tremendous wisdom in the 17-year-old who's about to step out there, and a 6-year-old who's about to eat that cake. All and the middle
Yeah,
child can't be left out
yeah,
just because they're a middle
can't be
child.
left out.
So for you and all your household, blessings of God paid for by the precious blood of Jesus Christ. We declare these things for you in the name that is above every name. Once again, I thank you. This is
Thank
Community
you.
Connect. Mr. Robert Singletary, has been a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
And to you all, be blessed and be a blessing.